and welcome once again to another episode of the HoriZone Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, your host, and I am at Bob McDonald on Twitter. Joining me, as always, is my fellow host, Jimmy Lemke.
I wouldn't say always, considering I've been on once in the 3 weeks. I mean, I know you did the HoriZone Roundtable. I know you did the Battle Royale over one day, but it was still 3 weeks. I enjoyed it immensely. I want to thank for everybody else for being a part of it. I thought Oliver Anderson was a standout.
Absolutely. Flames Mania, by the way, on Twitter.
Institutional memory is a huge deal, and he's been around the league as long as anybody. Longer than me, longer than probably everybody. What, you, Bob, right?
Yeah, thanks, because we need to point out my... Anyway, Jimmy's a Panther on Twitter.
Still.
And yep. Before we get started, we have Jack Talley, who is part of the Valhalla Vanguard. You can with their starting with their Twitter account, and now they have a podcast. So we wanted to have Jack on. But before we start, a little bit of housekeeping there, Jimmy. The HoriZone Roundtable's on Twitter now.
It is.
It is. We are at HoriZone RT. And the reason we're in HoriZone RT is because somebody took HoriZone many years ago, and you can't spell out Roundtable. So
I remember DMing them about 8 years ago when Brian Everson and I were putting together the HoriZone website. They didn't even respond. So
no,
the account hasn't tweeted since 2009.
Of course.
You can't just take an account. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those. It was back in the day. See, that's why I'm glad I have had my Twitter account for nearly 10 years now, and I, in fact, was fortunate enough to get Bob McDonald because I don't know what I would have been able to do otherwise.
I did get Jimmy Lemke as well. I don't very often tweet from there because I usually just go from where I'm specialized. But
there you go.
Most of it's from Panther U.
There you go. At HoriZone RT.
What about Jack? Jack, what's your Twitter handle?
Mine is Jack_Tally21. So there's a lot of Jack Tallies in the world that I found out while I was making my Twitter account. So
there's at least 20 of them.
At least. So yeah.
See, this is why I was fortunate enough to get in early. Really early, before anybody knew what Twitter was. So.
Yeah. I mean, I only started, I guess, 5 years ago, so I was definitely late to the party.
Well, 5 years ago, you were 12 or something like that. So.
Yeah, that's true. I don't even know if I was driving 5 years ago.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So Jack. Moving on, because I feel some old jokes coming on. In my direction, I might add. So
move
Jack,
on, or else they're coming.
Oh God. So Jack, you are part of the Valhalla Vanguard. Kind of explain to us how that started and what you've done since the beginning, and what you guys are up to now.
Yeah, so me and my roommate, we're sitting in our living room after we just made the NCAA tournament, and we're just starting to see a lot of student support towards NKU, some that we really have never seen at that school, and it was really exciting. And we were like, dude, we should hop on board this. We need to make something, whether that's a Twitter account, but just to get students more involved with the team. Because we were talking about before we started the podcast, we don't have a lot of beat writers that cover our smaller mid-major teams, and there's just not as much coverage, especially us being 5 minutes from University of Cincinnati, 7 minutes from University of Xavier, and an hour from University of Kentucky in Louisville. So we're kind of right smack dab in the middle of a lot of really big basketball schools. So that has taken away from our fan base in the past. So we were like, we got to get students involved to build generations of Norse fans. That is literally what we said. That's what we wanted to do. We want the people that go to NKU to raise NKU fans, and for years and years to come, build a fan base. And we thought that it needs to start right now. So we made the Twitter account NKU Valhalla with hopes to getting more students to games, just more pride in NKU and NKU basketball.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Jimmy and I have talked about it over multiple episodes about the importance of getting students even involved or even kind of paying attention to the schools, and because it does have long-reaching effects. As I've said a bunch of times, both online and maybe even on the podcast, young fans become old fans, and student fans become those future season ticket holders.
Exactly.
So,
and so invariably, your program just grows. Without, you have say you have 1,000 student fans. If you can get 1,000 student fans to commit to come out every game, you're not going to hold on to 100% of those people after they graduate. A lot of those people are going to fall back into, well, I'm a Kentucky fan, or I'm a Cincinnati fan, and then they're going to, there's some that are going to go back to that. But the more you can keep, and the more you can keep on NKU and NKU alone, the higher chance you have for many things. Some of those, the people who stick around, you want them to be season ticket holders. The people who go away, you want them to follow the team from afar. The people that are, the people of them that, they all grow up and become professionals in any number of different things, and hopefully one of them becomes successful. And maybe that person becomes very successful, and maybe that person builds you something.
Exactly.
That's why it's so important to have student engagement, because you want people to have very fond, positive memories of their time at NKU. So something like Valhalla Vanguard is incredibly important, because it's organically coming from the fan base, rather than something that's just, put together by the athletic department as trying to make up something that usually never ever works.
Exactly.
So, with regards, so you created the Twitter account, and now that's kind of grown into a podcast. Tell us a little bit about kind of who your co-hosts are, and what you've already put together. You already have one episode out there, and kind of tell us what your direction is for that platform.
Yeah, for sure. So, we've just, as you guys know, the podcast scene has just been blowing up recently. Specifically in the sports world, Barstool Sports, they do very well, and they have grown a very large brand built around podcasts. And we were like, we have the equipment to do it. We have the place to do it. So let's just do it. Hopefully people listen. If one person listens every week and enjoys it, then that's all it is, because we just wanted to have fun with it. And so we recorded the first one. We got solid feedback. We know that we need to improve a little bit, but we had over 500 listeners in the first 2 days, and we were on SoundCloud. We're on the iTunes store. We're on Google Play.
Awesome.
So all that is really exciting. But my co-hosts are Seth Cooper, who is the co-founder of Valhalla Vanguard, if you want to say that. And then a guy in his fraternity that I met through Seth, who was the on-court host at NKU games, and he's a senior. He's been really involved with NKU basketball and all over NKU. And then we have some other guys with us too, but just me, Seth, and Troy are the three hosts of the podcast. And just kind of for the future, we just want to have fun with it. We want to do weird, crazy stuff. And We're having Drew McDonald on Tuesday, and we hope that Drew, me being friends with Drew, I've been friends with Drew since high school. Hopefully Drew feels comfortable enough to just like relax. And it's just like we're talking in a living room, and not that he's talking to like a news reporter from Fox 19 or Lance McAllister, who's a Cincinnati radio personality. Yeah. So I don't know, just something authentic and real that fans can listen to get information about NKU and just have fun. And I don't know. I mean, I'm really excited for it. I'm excited for the future. I think we'll be able to have some really fun guests on there and talk a lot about, I mean, NKU and the HoriZone League, and just trying to make more fans. So it's cool.
Yeah. I love it, man. I hope you're really successful at it.
Hey,
absolutely. And I like the idea that you're doing something that's specific to your school. I know, Jimmy and I, we talk all about, all the HoriZone League teams or as much as we can, but it's always good to have kind of a specific focus on the school. There's not, I don't see we don't hear a lot of that in terms of podcasts. I know, you guys do it. The guys at the Reserve News, we're going to actually have them on next week. They do a podcast, The Viking Invasion, that talks about Cleveland State. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I don't know of too many other schools that are taking that next step. And I think it has a lot to do with as you mentioned it, that the organic, the students starting this group together and wanting to build it, as opposed to say, the school trying to put something together.
There's a lot of positive things that come from it being done by the students.
Yeah, absolutely.
or by fans in general. And the biggest reason is that there's already a built connection between fans, a lot, especially when you're talking about mid-major schools where fans we just know each other. Yeah. You can walk into, like, I can walk into State Fair in August and somebody will be like, "Hey Jimmy, what's going on?" And be like, "Hey man, I haven't seen you since basketball season."
Yeah.
That's just something that happens because there's not a lot of us in the crowds at our games. So that's just generally like something that happens, for us. The other thing that is a benefit for like the fans doing it versus the athletic department doing it is that when fans do it, there's I don't want to say this like, how do I say, like there's like a validity.
There's a little bit more autonomy.
There's validity to it. It's not fake. It's not forced. It's not.
Well, see, the other thing too, Jimmy, and this is something that I hearken back to from many, many years ago. You also run the risk of, potentially, playing favorites, if you will. And you might have, somebody. I don't know, maybe call me paranoid or something, but if the university is, if the athletic department is, trying to put this student section together, and you got one of these student fans who steps a toe out of the line, are they persona non grata after that point? Which is something to think about.
There's definitely a status that comes along with doing things like that, like just like there is with doing things that we do, like Panther U, and you do you have the websites that you write for. Mm-hmm. For now, there's a certain status that comes along with it, and you sometimes have to kind of like, you can't really go out there and just talk about a guy's mom. Like you can't go out there and trash talk a player like the other guys can, because that's going to come back to you. I remember, there are several points when I would like lead chants in the student section, and then people would come back to me later and be like, "I can't believe you did this," and I'm like, "Oh, that's right. You know who I am. I'm sorry."
Yeah.
Jimmy, that's the difference. Jimmy, that's the difference between you and I. I don't care. I mean, I have some standards, but by and large,
you have a filter. You have a better filter than I do. I had to grow up. Sorta.
No, yeah, I probably won't be talking about a player's mom, but yeah.
I had a woman soccer player's dad come over to me in the student section in the middle of a game and say, "You know why people don't come out to games like this? Because of assholes like you." And he said it in front of like all these like 8-year-old kids. Just there.
I won't even point out the irony.
We hadn't been swearing because of these kids, but we were still being kind of rough.
Well,
and he kind of came after me, and I was like, "Oh my god!" It just happens.
Did you guys hear about Grant Benzinger's mom with us this year?
No.
We've always had things with players. Our fans and Chad Knodel, who was on your thing last week, is gonna laugh because he knows what I'm about to say. But we had a thing with AJ Pocker's mom a few years back from Wright State. They in fact had every time that she would get yelling at them because she would just, she would always engage the other team's fans, which is just a terrible idea if people can figure out who you are and you're a family member of a player.
Oh yeah, it was really bad. They would
sing AJ Pocker's mom's got it going on.
No.
AJ's mom has got it going on, and she didn't really like it all that much.
I'm gonna say no.
That culminated in the 14 title game. In the Nutter Center, they were not happy with us at all.
Man.
But it was
so Jack, so the situation that's it. For those of you who kind of a brief synopsis. Maybe PG-13 version of that situation, because I'm sure that some of our listeners might know what that was, but others may not be.
Yeah, for sure. Well, she came to NKU because Wright State came to us first, and I mean it was a Thursday night dollar beer night. It was boy. I mean, we had about
the best.
Yeah, it was. We had about 1,500 students there, probably like 6,000 fans, and it was a packed house. And she had this sign because he's from Cincinnati, and I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole is Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati thing, whatever. But she had this sign that said Cincinnati loves Benzinger. And I mean, like a lot of our students are from Cincinnati and like we hate Benzinger and all this stuff. But so she has this sign and it says, Cincinnati loves Benzinger. She's like waving around and going crazy. And she like got into a altercation with the people behind her because she kept like whipping it behind her and it hit a dude in the face and they get it. Yeah, they get into it and then she's just like yelling at our players when they're like going in the tunnel, like calling them losers, like after Wright State beat us like at NKU. And then in the HoriZone League tournament, after we lost the first game, she was there too. And we were like walking in the locker room after we lost and she's like yelling at the players again, like, go home, Norse, you guys suck and all this stuff. And
oh my God.
Yeah. And then on Twitter, she got in a Twitter fight with our NKU Valhalla Twitter account.
What? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it was just great. It was craziness. She was like yelling at us, calling us unclassy and I'll say this. It was bad.
I will say this. There's always two sides to a story, and I'm sure somebody was quite not classy with her somewhere along the line.
Oh no, for sure. I mean, she was getting booed. Like people were cussing her out that were sitting over there, and I mean, it was not a good look for either fan bases, to be honest. So it was wild.
Yikes. Wow.
I don't know. It sounds awesome to me.
Well,
I like that stuff.
Well, given that she was rooting against you guys in the tournament and knowing who you guys lost to, I'm kind of okay with that last part.
Yeah, I understand.
AJ's mom has got it going on.
Oh no. See, you're right. I take it back, Jimmy. I actually do have. No, there's no way I would ever do that. Of course, I'm probably old enough to be all of their any HoriZone League players, father anyway.
Father?
So
yeah, well, maybe maybe you could have been AJ Parker's dad. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows?
Okay. No.
Possible.
Oh my god. Yeah. So,
anyway, I'm really happy to have Northern Kentucky because the fans are engaged, and that's the most important thing for that program going forward is keeping people engaged.
Yeah.
It's hard to do it when you only have a basketball team. I will say that it is really hard to do it.
Yeah. But the way that Northern Kentucky, I mean, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of an anomaly because, and maybe that's because we've engaged in having brought in schools that have not exactly been as engaging in the past.
Really?
But,
Tell me more.
Cough, IUPUI.
Oh, God.
Not who you were thinking of, was it, Jimmy?
No, I was thinking of Youngstown State, but that's fine. I mean, it's the same deal.
But at the same time, too, I mean, but at the same time, I mean, within the 3 or 4 years that within the 3-4 years that Northern Kentucky has been in the HoriZone League, they've already gone into an NCAA tournament, already gone to an NIT. You see kind of even in the face of, as Jack pointed out, the fact that you're across the river from two powerhouse Division I programs and an hour away from two even bigger powerhouse programs. And for
how did Cincinnati renting out the building?
That's
a good question.
I was curious about that.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of had started a little bit of bad blood between the two schools, which was weird. But I mean, we hated the traffic it brought. And we would complain about it on Twitter, and then they would roast us for saying, well, if you guys could sell out a game, then you guys would know what it's like or whatever. But I mean, it was good. I mean, I've always cheered for UC. I wouldn't really call myself a UC fan, but I cheer for UC. I cheer for the local teams, but yeah, I mean, I think it got us a home game with them in 2020. I think they're coming to us, so
cool.
Nice.
That'll be really fun. But I mean, it made a lot of money for BB&T, and that helped us. So I don't know. I was fine with it. There are some students that did not like it, and but also we pissed off UC fans a lot because we would only let them change the floor for like national TV games. So they had to play on like the Norse floor, and that really pissed off a lot of people.
Oh, so sad.
Those poor bitches.
Yeah.
Dude, I have no love I have no love for any high major fan who wants to complain about life.
Oh yeah.
You try going to games with 1,000 people at them, and then you tell me how hard life is.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they'll console themselves with the latest grad transfers who want to play for them or whatever.
That's what I'm saying.
So yeah,
life is good. Shut up.
So in terms of Northern Kentucky, I want to getting back to the Northern Kentucky specifically. You know, it's been a pretty astronomical trajectory to this point, and I see, we already see, first of all, you got a solid base coming back next year. Mm-hmm. You bring Adrian Nelson, who decommitted from whatever smoldering dumpster fire is going on in Detroit Mercy.
Yeah, that was bad.
Oh, it's still going on.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to figure. Yeah, so and I see a big push being made for Armand Davis.
Yeah. Just to talk about that real quick. He just came on a visit. He really, really enjoyed it, but I'm also very, very nervous. I was talking to some of my inside sources on the team, and he said that he really enjoyed it. And I think that it's kind of looking pretty likely that we're going to land him, but I'm also really nervous because I don't know if he still is there, but he went to UC Santa Barbara, and that campus is one of the most beautiful campuses I've ever seen in the world. I'm sure the women out there are beautiful, and they are not a bad
consistently
team.
Ranks in the top 10 of party school too, apparently.
Yeah, so
I mean, not like that makes a difference. I mean, but you know,
but I mean, so that definitely makes me nervous because I mean, UC Santa Barbara is not a bad team. I think they finished like second in their conference last year. So, I mean, UC Santa Barbara is a solid program out in sunny California. So that does make me a little nervous, but I think landing him would be really big. And then we also, Justin Coleman from Samford, but we're just in his like top 10 schools, but also Arizona, Ohio State, Marquette, and Auburn are in those top schools as well. So that doesn't look very likely, but it would be nice to land 2 grad transfers. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing about spring recruiting is that you really hope that they commit right away.
Yeah, exactly.
Your chances of landing them after they leave and they haven't committed lower. Yeah. They're not nothing. They're not even. I mean, you still could be 90% there. It's just the more campuses they see, if they're. I mean, what was it, UC Santa Barbara? You said he's checking out.
Yeah, UC Santa Barbara right now.
How is Santa Barbara right now? Weather's probably kind of nice.
Yeah, I bet it's 70 degrees and sunny. It's.
I'm looking out the window. I'm looking out the window in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and seeing 5 inches of snow on the ground and wondering why the hell I live here.
Oh, come on! I've heard Milwaukee's awesome.
Milwaukee is awesome. Milwaukee's fantastic. We have problems with alcohol, but you know, it's still a fun place to be.
I bet it is.
Like, we literally have a problem. When the largest lobbying group in the state is the Tavern League, you have issues.
Well,
I know people with several DUIs. Like I know multiple people who have 8 or 9 of them.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
There was a guy who got like 13.
13?
And they still let him, like, you know.
Oh, they still let him drive.
Yeah, like it's crazy. It's just crazy how we are in Milwaukee. But yeah, sometimes you have to drink because you look outside on April 15th and there's several inches of snow on the ground, and you it's just the worst. It's just the worst sometimes.
Okay.
Now, as far as like Northern Kentucky, have you given any thought to the fact that Northern Kentucky, the Norse, is actually the southernmost team in the HoriZone League?
Yeah, I know. It actually kind of makes me sad because here in NKY we take so much pride with being separated from the boonies of Kentucky and being more of a suburb of Cincinnati and just being more north than I don't know. I'm not a Southern man. I don't want to be associated with the South.
I'm not a Southern man. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess it does kind of strike my pride a little bit that we're the southernmost team in the HoriZone League. But
I just think it's a funny little quip.
Funny.
You know,
well, it's not their fault that the HoriZone League doesn't want to expand. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Well, I think it's not. I don't think the problem is that the HoriZone League doesn't want to expand. I think the HoriZone League problem right now is nobody wants to go here except probably Fort Wayne, and I'm guessing Western Illinois would want to come, but like we would even want them. Yeah, like even John LeCrone wouldn't take those guys. So.
Oh, are you sure?
Actually, as I say that, and as you say that, I'm actually not sure at all.
I'm sure
I wouldn't put it past him.
Oh,
I wouldn't put it past him. Yeah.
No, I was. No, I made the. I made the the comment that hey, Southern Indiana is coming to Division I. Maybe we might want to hop on that train. I don't know.
No, we don't hate Southern Indiana and Milwaukee, actually.
The beautiful
and Milwaukee,
Southern Indiana.
Here's the problem with Southern Indiana is that they're in a town with another Division I program that's another mid-major.
Where is it?
That left Evansville, yeah, and Evansville left the HoriZone League,
yeah,
to join the Missouri Valley back in what was it, like the early '90s.
Yeah, and
that hasn't shaken out very well for them. Yeah, so I think Southern Indiana might think of it as like a shot for them to take over, and obviously Southern Indiana has been a wildly successful Division II program. I mean,
True.
we know in Milwaukee that Bruce Pearl won national title there. Yeah. So it's it's a good program, but I don't know how much you can take.
You don't have to break out my map and find out if Southern Indiana is to the south or to the north of Northern Kentucky, and that will just thanks, Jimmy. That's just going to confuse me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Evansville is north of Cincinnati, but it's also pretty far south and west. Like I think it's on the border of Illinois. Like it's the middle of fucking nowhere. It's the absolute middle of nowhere.
It is. Oh,
which would be the number one reason why they shouldn't be in this conference.
Yeah.
Because so many conferences are putting together they're putting together programs. They're trying to put together teams based on, who has the best teams or who will have a good team. And they're starting to go away from what really makes teams like fit together. Geography, Evansville would be fine, but not Evansville, but Evansville as a city, Southern Indiana as a team. But like, we are a conference of like major public urban universities.
Yeah.
Except for Mercy, but of course Mercy is really only. I mean, Mercy's really there because they were one of the founding programs. But
and then the last ones left.
If you were to take Mercy out and put them in a different conference, what did the remaining 9 schools have? Were large urban universities. Yeah. And most of us are major ones. I mean, Green Bay is a small school, and Youngstown State's a small school. But like, for the most part, we're all big schools.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know how many students Youngstown State has. If do you know off the top of your head, Bob?
No.
Generally, okay. Green Bay, I don't know if you guys know this, but Green Bay only has about 6,000 students.
Yeah, Youngstown State, I think, has more than 10,000, I think.
Green Bay is about, like, Green Bay is like the 12th largest four-year UW school. Like, UW Oshkosh, Eau Claire, Platteville, Whitewater. Like, there's all these schools that are twice or almost twice the size of Green Bay. But Green Bay is the Division I school because what are they? They're the university for an urban area, or at least somewhat urban area, which is Brown County, the Green Bay area. So they fit because it's an urban setting. They play their games at the Resch Center. They're part of a city. Northern Kentucky is suburban, but it's still largely it's Cincinnati. Wright State is in Fairborn. We think of it as Dayton.
Yeah.
And then you have Oakland. Oakland's a lot like Northern Kentucky. It's a suburban school for suburban Detroit. Youngstown is a little bit more like, Wright State in that it's from a smaller urban area. Of course, Youngstown benefits from being the only one there, but Youngstown also has the problem of that it's, it's a Rust Belt town that's kind of fallen apart, as Bob and I know very well. There's not a whole lot of money there anymore, and the other problem with being in Ohio is that there's a billion schools there, and Ohio State is king everywhere.
Yes, it is, which is why the end all be all of human existence in Ohio is Ohio State.
But when you look at Milwaukee, IUPUI, UIC, those 3 schools specifically are Big Ten enrollment size schools. in major cities. How does Southern Indiana in Evansville, Indiana, really fit that? It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit it much at all.
Nope. But then again, LaCrone said, they're not doing expansion this year, so it doesn't matter. And it may not. It probably won't matter in the future.
And honestly, I think they're not doing expansion because I think Grand Canyon and New Mexico State looked at it and said, okay, we don't really need to be a part of it.
No.
The thing about the WAC that New Mexico State and Grand Canyon have been so longing to leave is that they can plug in whatever team out west is coming into Division I.
Yeah.
If it's something Baptist or whatever school, like they can just pick them up, plug them in. I don't buy the idea that Grand Canyon's going to the West Coast Conference to replace a departing Gonzaga,
which they're not doing anyway. Yeah,
that is not like for sure. Yeah, don't. Gonzaga's flirting with it. They've flirted with it twice. We know they flirted with the new Big East. We know they flirted now with the Mountain West. We know that Gonzaga is looking for the door. So that's all we really need to know from that angle is that Gonzaga is looking for the door. So if they leave the West Coast Conference, Grand Canyon wants to fill that spot. But I'm in a town with Marquette. I grew up in this town. I know the Jesuits. I'm Irish Catholic. I grew up in that. I know what the Jesuits are. I know what private Catholic universities would look at with Grand Canyon University, and I know it's going to be an emphatic no. Even if Seattle University is marginal at best, they would take them over Grand Canyon. It's that strong. BYU probably could have been in the West Coast Conference earlier had the Catholics not looked at the Mormons and said, I don't know if I want to be a part of those guys. Yeah. So the West Coast Conference is largely a Catholic league. So there's still like a weirdness about it. Over by you guys, there's a reason that Dayton's not in the Big East. If the University of Dayton were a Jesuit school and not a Marianist school, they'd be in the Big East.
Yeah.
But they're a Marianist school. They're not Jesuits. Xavier doesn't want them to be there.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it. And Grand Canyon is so much not even Marianist. So like if the University of Dayton that is established and one of the top 25 teams in attendance every year and has an Elite Eight in the last couple of years, if they can't get into the Big East because maybe partly because of this religious undertones, how is a Grand Canyon, which is a for-profit school that has
although it may not be much longer, by the way.
Yeah. Well, they're trying, but Bob, you have a lot of experience in.
Well, let me explain to you how they wanted to get around this. So as I understand how they wanted to, because they've tried to become a nonprofit within the last couple of years. They tried to do it a couple of years ago and they got shut down. The reason for that, theoretically, is because they were going to make the institution itself a nonprofit, but then they were going to spin off the services division or something like they were going to spin off this for-profit company that provided services to the university at a profit, which I don't want to get too much into my not so distant past, but yeah, I'm not really.
Suffice to say, Grand Canyon doesn't really have a move into the West Coast Conference.
No.
But with the struggles of our conference in the last couple of years,
yes,
Grand Canyon and New Mexico State looking at us as why
there's no way, not especially not after this year. Absolutely not.
With those two teams, we're barely stronger than the WAC with those two teams. So it's kind of a whatever. Robert Morris might be a team in the future, but I'm not sure that they'd be interested, especially as we've gotten more and more public over the years.
Yeah.
IUPUI, Northern Kentucky, Oakland. These are all schools that are basically replacing private schools. So there's a less of a, there was a time when we were talking about adding teams. I mean, you remember when we had 9 and then we added Valparaiso.
Yep.
Then it was, okay, if there's going to be an 11th and a 12th, they're more likely to be private, so we can have this private public, partnership. Yep. And now it's Detroit Mercy,
and then Loyola left, and then Valpo left, leaving Detroit Mercy to be the last private school. Essentially,
they got the facilities, which is what Northern Kentucky has going for it at best right now. Is that Cincinnati, UC is building that. Are they building? Or are they renovating their arena?
They're renovating it.
And how many seats does that thing hold?
I think it'll get up after this renovation. I think it's up to 18,000.
Okay. There's a major problem. There's a major problem with this, is that as video production of games becomes more and more accessible, especially this ESPN Plus thing that they just announced.
Okay, I want to talk about that horse shit for just a second.
There hasn't been any announcement regarding college basketball, but you can see that this ESPN Plus is built perfectly for these college basketball games.
Yeah,
which is outstanding, except for the fact I don't want to pay an extra $5 a month on top of what I'm paying for ESPN now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
which is
don't have cable. Cut the cord. That's what this is about. Is for the people who they know that people are going to be cutting the cord. People have been cutting the cord.
Basketball season is literally the only reason why I ever watch anything. That in the NBA playoffs, maybe.
The reason that I bring it up specifically is that college basketball, most sports are lowering in attendance. Yeah. Because people are saying to themselves, why spend the time and money to go down and sit in an uncomfortable seat to be part of an experience that maybe isn't as good of an experience anymore? So
get hit in the head with a sign.
This is one of the other Horizon League's other problems, is that we have all these big buildings. Well, University of Cincinnati building the 18,000, that's awful. It's a terrible idea. Duke has had problems getting students to games, and they have a 9,000 seat arena.
I disagree with that because of the fact that, with the U.S. Bank Center, correct, is if they're expanding to 18,000 in Cincinnati, I mean, I'm thinking of it bigger picture than just UC basketball, because if you look at some of the bigger venues, like in Columbus, you got. In Cleveland, you got Quicken Loans Arena. These are venues that are not only just for athletics purposes, but these are places for concerts and things like that.
It matters what the ownership is. Does the university own that building?
Yeah,
that's the question.
So I was wrong. They're downsizing. They're going to be at 13,000, but they play at Fifth Third Arena, which is in Clifton, which is where Cincinnati is. So US Bank Arena, which is right next to the Red Stadium, they actually don't play there, but that holds about 17,000. But that is like a total dump. The US Bank Arena. So UC has their own arena, and Xavier.
In fact, it was so bad that when they were renovating their own Fifth Third Bank arena, going to US Bank Arena was a dumb idea. They'd rather go pay for the nicer building at BB&T.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of bank arenas down there.
Yeah, there are. So the US Bank Arena, they haven't had basketball in there for. Gosh, I don't even know how long. They did the crosstown shootout there with Xavier and UC for a couple years, but everyone hated it.
Oscar Robertson played in it. It was probably the last time they had.
Yeah, the Royals played in it, I think, or before it was named US Bank Arena or whatever. I think they played in the Cincinnati Gardens. So,
okay.
So all that is interesting. But I totally agree, though.
Downsizing to 13,000 is really smart for UC.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense to me. So
I agree completely, because there are a lot of people. Why would I want to be crammed into bleacher seats when I could just watch it at home? Unless you're a Kentucky fan and you just go into Rupp Arena because you're psychotic and you want to sit comfortable.
There's something different about Kentucky. When you're talking about UK, what we have up here that's closest to that is not any of our college teams. It's the Packers. The Packers are religion. In Ohio, what you've got there, I mean, the Browns are very much like that. I mean, they still sell out even though they've been god-awful for so long.
That's because, I don't want to get into the Stockholm syndrome on that.
And they're going to be worse. They're going to be bad for a long time. Joe Thomas retired, and he's like 2 years older than me. I couldn't believe it. You poor bastards.
You can't get any worse than 0-16, man. Come on.
Oh, trust me. When they expand and drop down the preseason, you got 18 regular season games.
No.
0-18 is going to feel pretty nice.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, but you're absolutely, but you're also talking, and it's funny you mentioned that because in each one of these places, the football factor does play. In your neck of the woods, it's going to be Green Bay. In Cleveland, even though they suck something awful, you're still going to have the Browns. So I mean, it does come into play a little bit, but that's.
In Cincinnati, you've got Marvin Lewis.
Oh my gosh! No, we're not talking about that, man.
See,
the tears have been shed because of the Bengals in my household, so I don't like to talk about them, man.
And maybe not the best time to bring the Packers up, Jimmy.
Yeah, come on,
whatever.
All right.
I've gotten to see my titles.
Rub it in, why don't you? Jeez.
Yeah.
Come on, killing me here. So I think with that we'll go ahead and close out. We'll close out the podcast. Jack, appreciate your time. Just again, remind everybody where you can find the Valhalla Vanguard podcast.
Yeah, so we're gonna be we're on iTunes, we're on SoundCloud, also, and we're on Google Play if you have an Android. Also, we're on NorseReport.com. Our good friend Chris Hart, we
had on the Battle Royale.
Yeah, and he is also going to be a part of this podcast at some point. So he's awesome. He knows a lot about NKU. But yeah, I mean, you could just check out our Twitter. We'll post it Wednesday morning.
Great.
So our second one with Drew McDonald. So it's really
wonderful.
exciting.
All right. Well, that about wraps it up here for us here at the HoriZone Roundtable. Just like Valhalla Vanguard, you can find us wherever good podcasts are found: iTunes, Google Play. Jimmy, you mentioned you use Pocket Cast. Is that what you use?
Well, I use Pocket Casts on Android. I love it.
Go.
I get that. I get Star Talk. I get a few different podcasts.
Yeah.
I have a recommendation. If you like humor, the Onions podcast, A Very Fatal Murder, is hilarious.
Oh boy.
I would just point that out. It's really good.
And of course, we're hosted at SportsHacks, sportshax.com. So
we are so yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good name.
So, there you go. So, all right. Well, we thank you for your time, and we'll catch you next episode.
Thanks, everybody.